All right, everybody. Welcome to the video here where we're going to go over the answers to the June 2022 Regents exam. For this video, we're going to go over the part one answers as best we can. Hopefully, you've already tried this yourself, and we're just kind of checking our work at this point. So let's see. Starting with number one. Number one is a pretty straightforward question if you remember the product rule. So looking at this, we have our rule of exponent over root. So the exponent in my answer should be 3. It should be a fourth root, and that would be choice 1. Hoping everybody got that one. Number 2, we want to create a survey for a statistics class about the student school mascot name. So to create this, we need to create a random sample. So first thing we want to do is scan all these and make sure that we're collecting random samples. So number 1 is a random sample. Number 2 would be a random sample every 10th student. Every 4th student also would be a random sample. All members of the varsity sports teams. That's not random, right? That would be a selected sample. So we're sampling just from a certain sports team. That wouldn't be good. So 4 is definitely out of the question. Now, we need to not only have a random sample, but it has to be representative of the population of interest. So we're interested in the population of the whole school. So seniors would not be the whole school. And art classes would only be the students taking art. That does not represent the whole school. Number 3, everybody entering the cafeteria during lunch. Almost all of our students have lunch, so that would be a good representative sample of the whole school. Number 3 is a division problem, which you can answer by doing division or by doing the remainder theorem. So if we were doing this with the remainder theorem, since negative 3 would make that 0, we would plug in 2 times negative 3 cubed plus 7 times negative 3 squared minus 3 times negative 3 minus 25. Whatever this is your remainder. That value comes out to be negative 7. So there's your answer. That's the only one with a remainder of negative 7. If you chose to actually do the division or you just wanted to practice that, we have x and 3. We're trying to recreate the numerator using the boxes. So we have 2x cubed goes here, which makes 2x squared up top because that would multiply out, making this 6x squared. And we know these two boxes have to add to 7, and these two boxes need to add to negative 3x. So what adds to 6 to make 7 would be 1. So we got to put 1x squared in here, which would make this 1x. That would make that 3x. Then what adds to 3 to make negative 3 would be negative 6x. So we have negative 6, making this box negative 18. Now remembering that this last box should match that. If not, there's a remainder. So negative 18 plus some remainder equals negative 25. If you just simply add 18 to both sides, we then also see that the remainder is negative 7. The next one, the easiest way to do this would be to make a Venn diagram. So we'll make a box, make our 2 intersecting circles. One of the circles is for blue eyes, and one of them is for brown hair. So whenever making a Venn diagram, start with the most specific piece of information, and that's that 15 people have both. So we'll put that in the middle. So in the blue eye circle, that whole circle has to add up to 20. So this other piece is just 5. The whole blue eyes, brown hair circle has to add up to 22. So we'll put 7 in here. And all of it has to add up to 40. So if I add these 3 numbers and subtract it from 40, I would be left with 13. 13 is our neither number, so that's choice 2. Number 5 is just understanding function notation. You should really know this from Algebra 1. It doesn't really matter what the function is. It doesn't matter that it's exponential. So we have this exponential function that flips over the x-axis. Well, to flip something over the x-axis, we wouldn't add or subtract something that shifts it left, right, or up and down. To flip it over the x-axis, it's one of these two, and it's actually choice 3. When we put a negative in front of the function, it reflects it over the x-axis. Number 6 is understanding the remainder theorem again. So if p of 3 equals 0, that means this is a 0 of the function. So that means x equals 3 is a 0, which also tells us that x minus 3 is a factor. Those two things are true as soon as I see that. So we could just go ahead and choose choice 2 and move on. Number 7 required us to do a little bit of algebra. So they're asking you to solve this because they're not just giving you the answer, so we can't just straight up go in and type stuff in the calculator and try and figure this out. We actually have to do some algebra and see where we get to. So I'm just going to rewrite this over here so I have some space. First step, I would be dividing by 5. Look at your choices. They all have fractions in it, so don't change the fraction. Just leave it 7/5. Then we would natural log both sides. This comes to the front. So we have x plus 2 times the natural log of e, which we know is 1, equals the natural log of 7/5. So from here, we have x plus 2 equals the natural log of 7/5. We then subtract 2 from both sides, and we can see our answer is choice 1. They just put the minus 2 in front instead of in the back like you probably would have done if you were doing this by yourself. Number 8 is a multiple choice system. As soon as we see system and it's multiple choice, don't do any algebra. Go right to your graphing calculator. So we're going to use Desmos for this one. So let's open up a Desmos tab. And let's do this using Desmos. So to do this using Desmos, we're just going to type the first equation in: x plus 2y minus z equals 1. And we're going to hit enter, so we add that slider. Negative x minus 3y plus 2z equals 0. And we're going to have our last equation, 2x minus 4y plus z equals 10. So what we're trying to do is to move that slider until the 3 lines all intersect at the same location. So if I move my slider to the right, the point of intersection gets further apart. If we move it to the left, it gets closer together, and we're going to keep going until we get to a z value of 0. If I could get it to stop on 0. There it is, almost. Jeez. There we go. Once it's on 0, if we click the intersection, the x and y values pop up. So it's x3, y negative 1, z 0, which just so happens to be choice 2. So we're doing it all on the calculator. Number 9 is also kind of a calculator question. You just have to go through and figure out what to type in. So it gives us the monthly mortgage payment formula, defines everything in this first paragraph. So P is the principal amount or the amount borrowed, R is the interest rate, and N is the number of monthly payments. So if Adam takes out a 15-year mortgage, he's going to have 180 payments, 15 times 12. The rate, we don't want as a percentage, so we're going to change it to a decimal, 0.045, and the p-value is 240,000. So we just got to plug that all in. All right, so we're going to plug it into our equation, again, using Desmos, get rid of this 3 by 3 system, and we're going to start plugging stuff in. Since we have this big fraction, we're going to make a parenthesis to start. So I'll say 240,000, and I will make another parenthesis for the fraction of 0.045 divided by 12. We'll end that fraction and make a new one. We'll do 1 plus another fraction, which is 0.045 over 12 again. We'll end that parenthesis, and we'll raise that to the 180. If we then end that parenthesis and hit division, you'll make a big fraction. And then we can make our next parenthesis, which is 1 plus 0.045 over 12 again. Whoops. And we'll raise that to the 180th power. And then we will subtract 1. It's just typing it in. So we get choice 3. Okay, number 10 gives us a function of f of x and a function of g of x, and it asks us to subtract them. So all they're really asking you to do is to do x minus 3 squared minus x plus 3 squared. Most of you probably are going to make boxes for this. So if we make some boxes, x minus 3, we get x squared minus 6x and plus 9. So we have x squared minus 12x plus 9 for that first function. If we do the same thing for the x plus 3, we get x squared, 3x, and 9. So we have x squared plus, I don't know why I did 6x here. My fault. I was going too fast. Minus 3x, here we go. That's a 6. So this would be 6x and plus 9 as well. Now, the thing that some students are going to do here is they're going to forget that when you subtract, you're distributing that subtraction to everything. So this is going to become x squared minus 6x plus 9 minus x squared minus 6x minus 9. The x squareds are going to cancel. The 9s are going to cancel, and you're left with negative 12x. Number 11 is asking if you understand how to use the half-life question or formula, right? So in the half-life formula, 50 is the initial amount. 5,715 is the half-life. So it's not decreasing by half each year, it's decreasing by half every 5,715 years, so 1 does not make sense. 2 says the original sample is 50, that does make sense, so it's 2 only. Number 12 is average rate of change. So for g of x, the graph, we have to mark 2 and 4's x values on the function, so it's here, and it's here. So the point at 2 is 2, 6, and 4, 10. So the average rate of change for g is going to be 10 minus 6 over 4 minus 2, which is 2. For the function t of x in the table, we just have to use the 2 points where the x values are 2 and 4. So the average rate of change for the t of x function is going to be 3 minus negative 5 divided by 4 minus 2, which is going to be 4. So the average rate of change is not the same, right? G's average rate of change is smaller, right? This is g of x's average rate of change. This is t of x's average rate of change. And the average rate of change of t of x is double that of g of x. So we just have to figure out which one makes the most sense, which winds up being choice 4. Right? The average rate of g is half of that of t because 2 is half of 4. Focus and directrix, we might not have done yet in class, but if we did, we should have been able to do this one. So first thing we want to do is make a sketch. So we're going to write y equals 3. That's our line. 2, 1 is our vertex, meaning this parabola is going to open down because it always opens away from the directrix. And the focus is going to be inside that, equidistant from the directrix. So the distance from the vertex to the directrix is 2 units. So we want to go 2 units in the other way to get to the focus. So if we're at the point 2, 1 and we go down 2, we're at the point 2, negative 1. So that would be choice 1. If you're having trouble with that, use a piece of graph paper and actually count some boxes. Number 14 says approximately normally distributed. So that's going to tell us we probably need z-score, and it is. They give us 2 values that we need to find the z-scores of. So we're going to find the z-score for 64. So it's value minus the mean, which is 65.5, divided by the standard deviation, which is 2.9. That comes out to be negative 15 over 29 if you type that in your calculator. Remember, we want fractions there. The other z-score is with the value of 68. So we'll say 68 minus 65.5 over 2.9, and that's going to come out to be 25 over 29. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the proportion of all of our data that falls between the z-scores of 15 over 29 and 25 over 29. And that we need our calculator for. So we're going to go back to our calculator here, and we're going to go to functions and go down to normal distribution. Let's find it. Here it is. We'll click find CDF, and we'll put our numbers in. So negative 15 over 29 and positive 25 over 29. So we have our proportion is 0.503, and that's not the answer because we want to know approximately how many students. So out of 3,300 students, almost a little bit more than 50% of them is your answer. So that's really close to 1660, choice 1. All right, so the next one wants us to graph the logarithm function and see what makes sense out of it. So again, we're going to go to our calculator. You'll notice in multiple choice, you're going to do a lot of calculator work. So we'll type in f of x equals negative log. It's log base 10, so we just use a regular logarithm. They're in here somewhere. All right, just find log, x plus 4, and plus 2. So here's our logarithm. So it has, which one is true? So the first choice says it has a y-intercept at 2. It doesn't. The y-intercept is at 1.398, so choice 1 doesn't make sense. Negative f of x. Well, if I make this negative by putting a negative out front, it has a y-intercept of negative 1.398, which is not positive 2, so that doesn't make sense either. Get rid of that negative now. As the x values increase, the function decreases. As the x values increase, the function, increases. The function's decreasing as the x values get bigger. So choice 3 doesn't make sense. As the x values approach negative 4, so as these get closer to negative 4, because that's the vertical asymptote, the graph goes up forever. So this answer winds up being choice 4. Number 16 is talking about a researcher, and they want to know if room darkening shades cause people to sleep longer. We are looking for cause and effect. The only thing that we can do to cause an effect is a controlled experiment. Number 17, as soon as you see the word inverse, you switch x and y. So we're going to say x equals negative 6y plus 1/2. That's not an answer. So we need to do some algebra here. We need to get y by itself. So we have x minus 1/2 equals negative 6y. Multiply both sides, divide both sides by negative 6. So we get negative 1 over 6x plus, double negative makes a plus. 1/2 divided by 6, if you type that in your calculator, you get 1/12, which is choice 3. Number 18 is a division question, which you could do 2 ways. I know in my accelerated class, we messed with this a little bit. It was called the method of inspection. So you can kind of look at the numerator and try and make it look like the denominator using addition. So you can rewrite this as x squared plus 3 plus 9 divided by x squared plus 3. And then we can break that apart into 2 fractions, x squared plus 3 over x squared plus 3, and then 9 over x squared plus 3. Since these 2 things are the same, it becomes 1. There's your answer. If you did this with division, you can just make some boxes and do the division the same way. And you're trying to create x squared, which you can do by putting in a 1. You don't need this now. So you'd have a 3 here, and you'd say to yourself, just like we do with any division problem, 3 has to become 12. So you say 3 plus what remainder equals 12. That remainder is 9. Sorry, my handwriting is not the best here today. All right, let's move on to the next one. Next one talks about radians. So it says which value could represent the angle of theta in it is in quadrant 2. So I know it's somewhere between 90 degrees and 180 degrees, but it's a radian measurement. So we have to start thinking about which one of these could be a radian measurement in that quadrant. What you also could do is use the fact that radians are measured by the arc. So you could say like the arc is equal to the angle times the radius. So we could say the arc is equal to the angle in radians times the radius of 1. So the angle is 2 radians. That would be the easiest way to do that one. Number 20 talks about the depth of a bay, and it wants us to know which one is true. So for this, there's a lot of things going on here in this function. It's talking about minimums, maximums, specific times. So the easiest way to do this one is actually going to be to graph it. So if we graph this, make sure we're in radians. I'm not, so let's change that. And we can graph our function. So let me just type this one in. We'll call this t. Where's t? There's t. Equals, it is 5 sine of pi over 6 t minus 5. So say t minus 5 and then plus 7. Make it look just like the picture. All right, so here is our function. Right, we could stretch it and shrink it, see what it looks like. We can click for the minimums and the maximums, so we could try and answer our question. So first thing says it is saying that it starts at midnight. So at 2 a.m., which would be at the x value of 2, right? The x value of 2, it has a minimum value, right? We want to know which statement is false. So choice 1 is true. Choice 2 says the maximum occurs at 12 feet, which we know. We just saw that. That is also true. Choice 3 says the water depth at 9 a.m. is approximately 11 feet. So we can kind of scroll here on the actual graph and get to 9 and see it's approximately 11. You could also just type in d of 9. So if we type in d of 9, we see it's approximately 11. So choice 3 is also correct. And then it says the difference between low and high tide is 14 feet. It's not. Low tide is at 2, high tide's at 12, so the difference of 2 and 12 is 10. So this one is false. Number 21 is a regression equation. So it tells us that the function is defined as the next term is equal to the previous term plus the log of base n plus 1 times n minus 1. So it tells us the first term. So to find the second term, I'm going to replace all the n's with 2. So this would be the previous term. That's what that means. All right, so that would be 8 plus log. And instead of n plus 1, well, if n is 2, this is log base 3 of n minus 1. Well, instead of n, I'm going to put 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. Log base 3 of 1, if you type into your calculator, is just 0. So this is 8 plus 0, which is 8. That's the second term. The third term is going to be the previous term, which is 8, plus log base n plus 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. And instead of n minus 1, we're going to put 3 minus 1, which is 2. Well, if you type in log base 4 of 2 in your calculator, you're going to get 0.5. So this answer is 8.5 for the third term. If you forget how to do log base, you just have to scroll all the way down to where the logs are, and it'll have a log base button in there. You can put log base 4 of 2 into your calculator. That's where I'm getting that 0.5 from. You don't have to do any mental math there. All right, so the next one. Which function has a maximum y value of 4 and a midline of y equals 1? Midline would be the dead middle of your function. So choice 1 and choice 2 don't have a middle because they have arrows. These things go up or down forever. There is no midline for those. So we're stuck with either choice 2 or choice 4. So choice 2 has a midline of 1. That's the midline. Choice 4 also has a midline of 1. So both of them have the right midline, but we want a maximum y value of 4. So if the midline is 1 and the amplitude is 4, this would have a maximum of 5, making this incorrect. If the midline is 1 and the amplitude is 3, remember the negative is not part of the amplitude, this would have a maximum of 4, meaning this is my answer. Okay, the next one is just a multiplication problem with some i's in it. So you're going to make some boxes. On the side, we'll put x and yi. On the top, we'll put x squared, negative xyi, and negative y squared. Got to be careful here of our signs. So x squared times x is x cubed. X squared times yi is x squared yi. That's a y. Negative xyi times positive x is negative x squared yi. These are going to cancel. Negative xyi times yi is going to become negative xy squared I squared. Negative y squared positive x is negative xy squared. Remember, always do it alphabetical. It makes it easier to combine like terms. And lastly, we have negative y cubed I. Now, this box has I squared in it. I squared, remember, is negative 1. So this is really negative x squared. Negative xy squared times negative 1, which becomes just positive xy squared, which is going to cancel with this. So you're left with x cubed minus y cubed I, which is choice 4. All right, last one here on the multiple choice. Hopefully you did well on this one. We have a function in terms of the yearly growth rate of a $500 investment, and I want to put it in terms of the monthly growth rate. I don't care about the initial value here. I just care about the 1.03 to the t. To put this into the monthly growth rate, I need to make the exponent in terms of months. So I'd multiply it by 12. Well, I can't just do that. I have to also change the exponent inside to 1/12 so it's the same value. 1/12 times 12 is back to 1. So we really didn't change anything, just what it looks like. If we type 1.03 to the 1/12th power in our calculator, we get 1.00247. It's rounded, and that's okay, which gives us choice 1. Hopefully this video helped, and you got a lot of these right by yourself. See you soon.